You're entering Corsi Nation.
Now we have a special guest with us today, a repeat guest, Mike McCormick. Mike, how are you?
Good to talk to you again, Dr. Corsi.
Well, I'm finding your book and I'm going through it. This is the case to impeach and imprison Joe Biden. And I think it's a very important book. I've been going through it very carefully. And Mike was a stenographer for many years at the White House and got to be the personal stenographer for Joe Biden for a number of years. I want him to explain this. But in this book, he has a very important story about the connection between Pope Francis and Barack Obama, which was brokered by homosexual pedophile Cardinal McCarrick, who had finally was released from the priesthood by the Pope. He was not excommunicated. He was basically just defrocked, and Pope Francis didn't excommunicate him for being a massive, outrageous homosexual and pedophile, having sex with altar boys and seminarians. But that was okay. Pope Francis did excommunicate last week Archbishop Vigano, because Archbishop Vigano is actually a Christian and actually believes in traditional values. This is a very important story today. And I'll be publishing it on my Substack, and we'll be getting this video out. And I'm sure the Archbishop will appreciate it, as he did some of the previous work we've done on the story. But now the story is really developing, and I can report it in much more detail. So first of all, Mike, would you give everybody the background of what your tour in the White House was like, and so we have an understanding of how many years you were there and what you did?
Right. Thanks, Dr. Corsi. Well, I started at the White House as a stenographer with the press office in the year 2002. And I was generally assigned to Vice President Cheney. And then, so I got experienced working with Vice President's office. But also at that time, this was the rollout to the Iraq War. I spent a lot of time working between the press. Any time the press interviewed National Security Advisor Dr. Condoleezza Rice, spent a lot of time in her office as she explained the reasons for the Iraq War. And then part of my job was also flying in Air Force One and Air Force Two. I left that job in 2007 for a couple of years down in Richmond with a nonprofit. It didn't work out well, so I came back to the White House in 2010. With my experience, I was a good person to fit back into the team. I had a good relationship with my manager. And then started working for Barack Obama and Joe Biden. I didn't really care much about politics. I wasn't that political. I was a neutral observer. And it was with the press office. I had a lot of interaction with the press. Pardon me. But I got to know Joe Biden because when I worked for him, I heard everything he said, and he was very ambitious to be president. He did a lot of public events. He had a very close relationship with Cardinal McCarrick. He would talk about having Cardinal McCarrick over at his National Observatory residence often. Oh, there's Cardinal McCarrick in the back of the room. Hey, Cardinal. And so I got to understand that Cardinal McCarrick was very close to Joe Biden. And also, he had a lot of influence in Washington. When I worked with the Bush administration, McCarrick was always sort of present and talked about at prayer breakfasts, things like that. And George W. Bush was a born-again Christian, so he was sort of religious oriented. And Cardinal McCarrick is he went from being the Archbishop of Washington, D.C. to being the Archbishop as a Cardinal in 2001, just as 9/11 kicked off. So, and he was very well known and liked by liberal Democrats and the media who were Catholics because he was he backed the idea that a liberal Democrat who approved of abortion laws could still get communion. Nancy Pelosi, Senator Leahy, Vice President Biden all fit in that category. And he also was willing to be liberal about gay marriage in the church. And so that came in more with the Obama administration. So he was there, the cardinal, under Pope Benedict. Well, what also happened, so I'm working with Joe Biden, and I worked with him all the way to the end of his time there in the White House. 2017 January, left, and I worked 1 year with Mike Pence, and then I lost my job because of cancel culture came for me. They didn't like me in the office being a pro-Trump guy, even though Trump was our president. So I started writing books, and that's what I've been doing.
Well, this book is an extremely good book, and I do recommend everybody get it. Now, and it's strong about the Bidens and who they really are. Now, let's go into McCarrick a little bit more. McCarrick is older now. He must be in his 90s or close to it.
He's 93, I think.
93, yes. And he had a long history in the church of having sex with the altar boys and the seminarians. So he's a homosexual and a pedophile. And yet he was never outed in all those years by the Catholic Church, when the Catholic Church was protecting priests, bishops, archbishops, cardinals who were homosexual. Right. And the Catholic Church began to develop a homosexual subculture among its clergy. Okay, now this story in particular has to do with some events that you witnessed in terms, and I'm going to basically argue that Cardinal McCarrick was the deep church connection to the Obama administration deep state.
Right.
And the two of them were working in conjunction to destroy the United States, destroy the Catholic Church as we know it. And that was their plan. Now, the specific argument around that is going to be made around Honduras. And I want to give you some background, because what happened was that McCarrick, together with Pope Francis, we're going to call him Bergoglio now, because I don't really consider him a legitimate pope anymore. I'm completely with Archbishop Vigano in that this pope was illegitimately elected, that he is the one who's the heretic. And through these synods, these meetings with bishops, he is trying to introduce that they should find a place to listen and include in the Catholic Church the LGBTQ, transgender, add on anything else you wanted, necrophilia, whatever other sexual perversion you can consider. These people just love each other, and why shouldn't we include them in the Catholic Church? Which to me is inviting Satan into the Catholic Church. Now, this scheme in Honduras, we're going to find out the conclusion at the end of this program is that taxpayer money and Catholic Charities money were donated into what was known at the time and should have been known widely by Obama and Biden to be a cocaine smuggling and cocaine smuggling and child sex trafficking operation on the southern border with Mexico that was being run by the president of Honduras. In fact, two presidents of Honduras. And it was known at the time by the DEA, and yet this was put together. So in 2014, the Obama administration launches this Alliance for Prosperity, and very clever. They did it's A and number 4P, A4P. Okay, Alliance for Prosperity. And supposedly this was to stem the flood of illegal immigration from the Central American Northern Triangle countries of Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador. So in 2014, all of a sudden, we were seeing this surge of illegals coming in from Central America, including Honduras. And a lot of them were unaccompanied minors. And in 2014, a series of meetings were architected by McCarrick and coordinated with Pope Francis in Obama's White House. And Mike, why don't you take the story from there and get us into it?
Right. And there's a really important aspect about the Catholic Spring that rose up in Obama's White House. So WikiLeaks has put out some emails that were they were given from John Podesta's email account way back in like 2016 during the Hillary Clinton campaign. One of the emails, John Podesta talked with some other people about the Catholic Spring. Somebody wanted to put into the Vatican this sort of upwelling of new ideas that they considered then was taking over the Arab Spring. Basically, they wanted to liberalize the Catholic Church, and Podesta kind of shrugged that off in this email I read. But what did happen was a guy, I think, picked it up and engineered it. His name was Dennis McDonough. Dennis McDonough was then working as an assistant to Dennis McDonough is a Catholic. He has two brothers who are Catholic priests. He was working as an assistant to then National Security Advisor Tom Donilon, who was a Biden operative. Donilon is also a Catholic. He went to he did some work at Catholic University. I think he might have done grad school at Catholic University, and then he became a deep state guy. And so he was a national security advisor for Biden, and McDonough was working with him. And
this
McDonough
is the
became
best
White House
of
Chief
Dr.
Staff
Jerome
in
Corsi on
2013,
the Truth
January.
Central. This
3
is
months
the
later,
best of Dr.
Pope
Jerome
Francis was
Corsi on the
elected
Truth
after
Central.
Pope Benedict resigned. And the election of Pope Francis, there's a video that Cardinal McCarrick did where he's basically talking to an audience at Villanova University in the fall of 2013, explaining what a good friend he is of Pope Francis, and how he states in this video how he was kind of instrumental behind the scenes in getting Bishop Bergoglio elected to be Pope Francis. He was at the conclave and he worked behind the scenes and he promoted Bergoglio, and that became where he wound up. As soon as Pope Francis was in, McCarrick started working out in front of out in public to do many duties for Pope Francis that coordinated very closely with the Obama-Biden policies. One of the things they worked on almost immediately, Pope Francis sent a letter to Xi Jinping in China, and he didn't tell anybody about it. And he got a reply back from Xi Jinping, and he basically wanted to improve the Vatican's relationship with China, make a deal with them.
And Mike, let's save the China. We'll cover that in a separate one because I want to
Okay.
get the whole story by. Let's just stay with Honduras in this one.
Yeah. So, and that was 2013. So 2013 passes, and McCarrick did go to China. He went to China, and he went to China on behalf of the Pope because he stopped off in Rome on the way. So we get into 2014, and McCarrick is having a lot of meetings with McDonough. And then in 2014, in the fall, in March, President Obama goes to the Vatican and meets with Pope Francis. And a month later, Pope McCarrick goes to, this is in late March of 2014. A month later, McCarrick goes to Iran to meet with the Ayatollahs. They're pushing the Iranian nuclear program for Obama. And this is coming right out of Obama and McDonough.
And we'll cover that too separately. Let's say,
and then
let's zero in on Honduras now.
And then in 2014, in June, McCarrick goes into a meeting with McDonough. And then they start negotiating with these. They have a big meeting of the Northern Triangle countries, the presidents, and President Juan Orlando Hernandez is in there. Now, Orlando Hernandez had been elected in also December 2013. So a lot is happening with elections in 2013 out of the Obama-Biden White House. There's a lot of change that they're fomenting. They did it in Honduras. They also did it in Ukraine, and they did it in the Vatican. So there's a lot of behind the scenes deep state activity coming out of there. And Honduras, the guy in 2014 is Juan Orlando Hernandez. In February 2014, the Drug Enforcement Administration has his brother on tape talking about smuggling cocaine in the United States by the ton with the government's help. So the DEA knows what this guy is doing. He knows this gang is doing this. And I've worked in the White House a long time. I know how the information gets kicked. Information like that would get kicked immediately up the ladder and used. And so at the top of the White House, they didn't care that this guy was smuggling drugs. There's also the military's involved in this. General, at the time, General John F. Kelly was in charge of Southern Command. And he became very close with this guy, Juan Orlando Hernandez. And he was then sort of aware that they were smuggling drugs through the U.S. And they didn't care. So in June, they start this uprising of all these kids on the border. No one's really sure to this day how they got there. And it might have been cartels. It might have been Orlando Hernandez's word to the cartels. It might have been the church, Orlando Hernandez or somebody in the church saying, let's get these kids up there. And they're at the mercy of these coyotes. I mean, these kids there was over 60,000 kids that summer that showed up at the southern border, transited through Mexico. How did they get there? What horrific acts did they endure to get there? In July 2014, Juan Orlando Hernandez goes in the White House. He meets with Joe Biden. He meets with Obama. They know he's smuggling drugs. A week later, McCarrick goes in and meets with McDonough. He meets with McDonough 3 times in the month of August. And this is when they're setting up the Alliance for Prosperity. Who gets the money? How much money is it going to be? What are we going to do with the money? And this is McCarrick and McDonough talking about what the Catholic Church's role in this is.
Okay, now let's just stop for a minute. The previous president, the one who was ousted in the Honduras spring, which was again a State Department and CIA orchestrated coup d'etat. They got rid of, what was his name?
Pepe Sosa Loba.
And what was his son doing?
His son was a drug smuggler too. And his son was arrested in 2015 and convicted in 2016.
And he's in prison right now. He's in prison. He's in prison right now. He's in
prison right now, yeah. He'd smuggled drugs by the ton also. And so basically, the Hernandez brothers took over the Sosa Lobos drug smuggling operation. And the Hernandez brothers were really closely aligned with the Sinaloa cartel. That was El Chapo.
And they were also smuggling drugs. And I'm confident also that they were getting children into the sex trade.
Yeah.
And the CIA was orchestrating the getting Hernandez into power, along with the State Department, along with the Obama White House, along with the Pope.
And the DOD. And, General Kelly was part of it too.
And also not only the Department of Defense and General Kelly, but you also had the DEA, the Drug Administration, the DEA, Drug Enforcement Agency, which had to be monitoring all this and had to be knowing about Hernandez's involvement with El Chapo. And so, as I've maintained since I found out, HSBC was laundering money in 2011, they were doing it for the drug cartels. The CIA, the U.S. government are at the heart of the drug smuggling. We participate in it. We benefit from it. We run it. We're at the heart of the child smuggling operation to be placed into sex trade as children. And of course, Honduras is noted because it's the location of the Sound of Freedom movement, which was all about child sex trade in Honduras. So again, the idea that this was just to stem the tide of illegal immigration, it's all a cover story. It's all a lie. This is a part of the Jim Carrey Truman Show. That's what the public's being told. It sounds lofty. These guys are all working for a noble objective, but they're not. They're working to keep the border open and to smuggle drugs, to destroy people, kill people, putting children into sex trade, child slavery, which is the worst, a horrible thing to do to a child who has even no concept of sex. Brutal. They're separated from the parents who are no longer protecting them. For a child, it has to be hell. And these demons, I'm talking about Obama, talking about Pope Francis Bergoglio, talking about McCarrick, Cardinal McCarrick, who was then yet a cardinal when this was all going on, with the full access to the Pope and the Vatican, are now engineering a plot where they can continue all the drug smuggling, continue the child trafficking, and through this Alliance for Prosperity, they're going to shower Honduras with millions of dollars that can be stolen and taxpayer money. And there are Catholic charities working in Honduras who, again, are funneling money into Honduras, which can be stolen.
Right.
Did I miss anything?
It's important to note, too, that Archbishop Vigano at the time was the papal nuncio in America, and he had McCarrick in his sights. He knew McCarrick was a bad guy. They started, looking into McCarrick's past, hearing about complaints about McCarrick. I think Archbishop Vigano was named papal nuncio in 2011. So from that time, he started hearing about this guy McCarrick. And at the time, the Vatican was willing to sort of say, well, he these allegations against him are just slanderous. It's not, don't pay too much attention to it. But he kept hearing them. And so in 2013, Archbishop Vigano confronted Pope Francis in the fall of 2013. He confronted Pope Francis and said, there's a binder. I have a thick binder of allegations against McCarrick. He's a sexual predator. And Pope Francis didn't do anything about it. And this is actually close in time to when McCarrick gets up in front of Villanova and does this "I'm a good friend of the Pope" presentation. And in that presentation that McCarrick did, it's significant. He talked about he had a very bad illness. He had a heart situation during a mass for Pope Francis on his installment, and he was taken to the hospital in an ambulance. And the Pope called him in the hospital in a very personal call, and McCarrick, said, the Pope said, "How are you?" And he said, "Oh, I'm okay. Looks like I'll get better." And the Pope made a joke and he said, "Well, I guess I didn't have a bed for you in hell yet." So the Pope was joking with him about the fact that he's a bad guy. It's not funny, the level of evil that he did. And the Pope was kind of joking about it. And this to me says that Francis knew. Now, Francis later, when McCarrick was pinned down as being having had sex with a minor, and that's what led to him being defrocked. So this is 2017. Trump comes in in 2016 and stands up to this illegal immigration process that's been going on under Obama. He says, we're going to build a wall and we're going to stand up to the cartels. And he cut the funding of Alliance for Prosperity in half in 2017. And this is right when McCarrick gets outed by basically the Vatican. Says, you know what? We've got a complaint by a guy who was an altar boy from the 70s against McCarrick. We're going to put him on hold. And they put him on hold. And then in 2018, after investigation, they said, yeah, he's being defrocked. He did a kind of an appeal to the process, and the appeal was denied. And from 2019 on, he's been basically put in seclusion. He's at an undisclosed location. No one can talk to him. There's been a lot of lawsuits waged against the church by his victims, and he's been found by the courts to be unable to stand trial because he's like Joe Biden. He's too old and forgetful. He's an old, forgetful man. So they can't put him on trial. They can't have him defend himself. So this is what the Vatican did: is they basically, by ignoring Archbishop Vigano, they elevated this guy into this position where he could help Obama, deep Vatican, deep state coordination, And Francis was very much a pro-migration pope. He was echoing the New World Order of we've got to equalize the world by bringing migrants into Europe and into the West, the wealthy West and wealthy Europe, and that's what Jesus would want. But you know, they've done it with criminals. These guys, the Pope and McCarrick and McDonough, put the church in alignment with criminal cartels in Honduras in 2014, 2015, and 2016. And now they're doing it all over again on the southern border. And the important thing about these meetings with McDonough is a witness. He's now the Secretary of Veterans Affairs in Joe Biden's cabinet. And he's a witness who can testify and say, you know what? I know what the Pope did. I know what the Pope knew about in this Alliance for Prosperity setup. I know that Obama and Joe Biden knew that the Honduras president was aligned with cartels. They knew they were doing business with a criminal. They knew they were putting the church in with a criminal. This guy can say that as a witness. He's a Catholic. His brothers are priests. He understands the role he plays of confession. He understands what confession means to a man like him. Not only confessing the crimes, but confessing his sins. And he hasn't done that. And
Well,
I've been in touch with him, emailing him saying, you need to answer these questions. I have not heard back yet from him.
Well, you're not going to hear back from him. In 2021, there was an investigation by the Archdiocese of St. Paul, and they concluded that Dennis McDonough's brother, Father Kevin McDonough, the top official of the Archdiocese, quote, had not always demonstrated sufficiently sound judgment in handling allegations of ministerial misconduct or attending to his duties to prevent harm and create safer environments. So though he was not accused of abusing children himself, Father Kevin McDonough was demoted from the Archdiocese to work as a pastor in the Incarnation Catholic Church in South Minneapolis, because he protected all the pedophile priests, and he protected all the homosexual priests, and so McDonough himself is complicit in, I'm sure, approving, certainly not condemning his brother, saying, "Oh, well, my brother's got a sexual proclivity, he likes men." And the sex that men do together, which has nothing to do with procreation, I assure you. And the whole idea is that all these people were in bed as supporting pedophilia, because this whole idea of keeping the border open in order to have immigration, which is what Pope Francis is encouraging, keeps the border open for the cartels to take all of the children who have been abducted from their homes and forced into sex slavery to drop them in the United States where they can be placed in more profitable locations. But I want to read something that the Archbishop Vigano wrote in his book, A Voice in the Wilderness. And his testimony, his whole first part of this book is all about McCarrick, part 1. And he said, it's also clear that from the time of Pope Francis's election, McCarrick, now free from all constraints, had felt free to travel continuously and to give lectures and interviews. McCarrick had become the kingmaker for appointments in the Curia, which is the inner Vatican priests who rule the Vatican, and the United States, and the most listened to advisor in Vatican for relations with the Obama administration. Okay, so Archbishop Vigano knows that this pedophile homosexual cardinal, who is going to hide like Biden so he doesn't get put in prison for his criminal behavior, saying, I'm too old, I can't remember, and is still out of prison, still not excommunicated, was the center of this drama, putting together Biden, the deep State Department dealing with drugs and pedophilia, same as they've done in Ukraine, overthrowing a legitimate government as they did in Honduras and Ukraine, Maidan Rebellion in 2014, the same period of time.
Mm-hmm.
This Arab Spring. They were overthrowing regimes all across northern Africa and replacing them with radical regimes. And they did the same with the Catholic Spring, having a coup d'etat in the Catholic Church to force Pope Benedict XVI to resign so they could put in the communist Bergoglio. And I constantly point out Bergoglio's name has Bergoglio. It's got Gog in the middle of it, Gog and Magog. And you can look up Ezekiel 37:38 and see the war between Gog and Magog. So we got Bergoglio is now the illegitimate pope, with McCarrick having played a role after Pope Francis resigned to get Pope Francis, after Pope Benedict XVI resigned to get Pope Francis by the cardinals, the conclave of cardinals, to be the next pope. And by the way, that was the point where a lightning bolt hit the tip of St. Peter's. So God was indicating that he was on to this. And these meetings that McCarrick had with McDonough in the White House were orchestrating behind the scenes this transfer of money, all these ceremonial purposes. Biden with a photo taken in 2014 in this July 25th meeting, shaking hands with President Hernandez, whose family has been owned by the Sinaloa cartel. El Chapo is one of the most notorious drug dealers in South America and Central America. So again, this is the corruption that's at the heart of the Obama administration, the Catholic Church, the cooperation between Obama and Pope Francis in order to bring the LGBTQ++ agenda of Satan into the heart of the Vatican. Okay, let's continue, Mike. So what continues from this point?
So, well, the other thing that they were working on, so what Obama and Biden wanted to do with this Alliance for Prosperity was set up a liberalized immigration process that ran through 2016. What they didn't expect was the election of Donald Trump. So President Trump comes in 2017. He cuts funding for Honduras. He cuts funding for these triangle countries, and he sets up a really strong anti-immigration process where people can't just roll across the border. When the election was stolen in 2020, with the help of a pandemic, that was produced by operatives for Joe Biden. Joe Biden comes back into power. He rescinds all of President Trump's immigration, his wall and the Remain in Mexico laws, all of Trump's immigration challenges, that kind of that made it really tough made it tough for people to get into America illegally. And so people have been flooding in here. And the reason is they want to use the names of these illegal immigrants to stuff the ballot box. That's what this is about. And Trump said that in the debate. And so that's what the deep state side of it was. We want unmitigated, unfettered immigration into America from wherever we can get, so that we can rig the elections and stay in power. And the church was willing to do that. The U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops, USCCB. Now, McCarrick was a part of that. He was on several committees there. They've got over $100 million in grants from the Department of Health and Human Services here in Washington. That the USCCB is headquartered here in Washington. Over $100 million in grants in the last 2 years from the Biden administration to help refugee resettlement. This is Pope Francis turning the church into a cartel assistant. It's like the church is profiting on the north end of the border, and the cartels are profiting on the south end of the border. And Joe Biden is the middleman, and what he gets out of it is all the voters and all of his supporters. They get unfettered immigration, whatever that means, lower wages for migrant workers who are, have to, can be taken advantage of very easily. So this is what this was. It was a horrific human event. It's a human catastrophe. And Pope Francis is behind it. And it's happening in Europe too. Italy, France, England, they're all facing these terrible immigration surges that have changed the nature of the country. And part of it is because of the church has sort of fallen back from its responsibility to be the voice of reason and say, you know, Christian values matter, and you can't align yourself with criminals and cartels to do business. You can't have the church do that. That's an illegitimate pope that's doing that. And that's what Pope Francis is. He's illegitimate.
Well, the also the the nature of the Catholic Church at this point. We're showing a picture there of Biden meeting with Pope Francis, and we showed Obama meeting with Pope Francis, and McCarrick has orchestrated all of this, and everybody's real thrilled. There's a woman smiling in the background, really proud that, you know, Biden and the Pope are together. Okay, these guys are together in an evil purpose. And the Catholics, like Biden, who supports abortion, strongly supports abortion, and supports abortion, extreme abortion. I reported in the Obama Nation, which I published in 2008 against Obama. And I used abomination in the sense of Daniel and the abomination, meaning this is a horrible situation, this Barack Obama coming into power. That, in fact, we are having Satan at the heart of this because they support killing babies even after they're born. Obama gave a speech on the floor of the legislature in Illinois and said if a woman doesn't want to have a baby, if the baby's born and alive, that baby can be killed if the woman doesn't want it. That's infanticide. It's a living human being. And it means unlimited. Just kill your children if you don't want them. Kill them when they're born. And here you've got Obama and you've got Biden. Of course, they'll say, well, we don't support that. They support late-term abortion, where the child is really a human being. It's a fetus. It's a living fetus. They don't have any respect for the fetus's right to life. I thought the Pope was supposed to protect human life. I thought Obama, as president, was supposed to protect human rights. These two are criminals. And they've lied to the public, saying, well, we're giving all this money to Honduras really to secure the border. Well, if that money was given to secure the border, why isn't the border secure? Because they don't want it secured. Why is sex trafficking going on in the United States at a massive level? Because our officials at the highest level are okay with it and are profiting with it. Organizations of the U.S. government, like the Department of Treasury, know what's going on. You can't run a drug cartel without getting the money into a bank. The NSA knows what's going on. CIA is running it. We're complicit in this. And this is where the judgment of God is going to come down hard in America, because we cannot have Satan at the heart of the United States government and the Vatican ruling the world. This is a travesty against God. And the heresy, the insult to God, is on Pope Francis, on Bergoglio, not on Archbishop Vigano. When Christians are persecuted, and we see in Revelation St. John, end days, that Christians will be massively persecuted. It's happening, and it's got to come to an end. So, Mike, why don't you continue here as we kind of work towards wrapping this chapter up. We're going to have more on McCarrick. We have more on the Pope. We're going to have more on Obama. There's lots more here to unravel. But Mike, continue with the story. I think you're doing the insights you have about McDonough and his role, the Catholic bishops and their role, the amount of money these people get by supporting Satan. This is absolutely unconscionable. Mike?
Well, yeah, McDonough's got to confess. You know, he knows what a confession is. And he knows that he can go to his brother, the priest, or a priest, and whisper in their ear and have a confession. But that doesn't address the harm that he's caused so many people with this. And this is along the southern border. There's hundreds of millions of people that have suffered from this Alliance for Prosperity. And he's got to come out and tell the truth. You know, the truth is the word of God. And that's what Archbishop Vigano has been saying. That's what I've been saying. That's what you've been saying, Dr. Corsi. And the government is saying the exact opposite. So if McDonough is somebody who's concerned about his role in public life and his role in his eternal, the health of his soul, he's got to confess. He's got to answer. Did Pope Francis know he was putting the church in alliance with cartels in 2014 with the when they entered into the Alliance for Prosperity? Did McCarrick tell Francis? Did McCarrick know that they were doing deals with a guy who was dealing drugs in the United States as a cartel kingpin? Did Obama and Biden know? And, you know, to me, I'm making an assumption that they knew because I've seen the level of intelligence that's gone through this process. And I know what happens in the White House when there's intelligence about those things. They don't go down and give $500 million to someone without doing a background check. And the background check is pretty significant. And it would turn up the fact that, hey, wait, there's a DEA investigation that has his brother on tape saying they're drug smugglers. Maybe we shouldn't give it to them. Oh, no, they did. They gave it to him anyway. So this is the travesty of this Alliance for Prosperity. And Joe Biden had his hands all over it. And he has to this day. And this is a deep evil that's facing our world. And the Vatican is part of it. And I applaud Archbishop Vigano for standing up to the evil in the church, the deep state and the deep Vatican. He's standing up to both. And we need more like him.
Well, I want to read a paragraph or two out of your book. Mike sums this up. Page 286. Mike wrote, "It was in late 2013 that Porfirio Lobo Sosa lost the presidency to Juan Orlando Hernandez. That may have been by design, because almost immediately Orlando Hernandez struck up quite a business relationship with Joe Biden. And Joe's cartel connections grew stronger than ever because Hernandez was a bad guy, a very bad guy. He and his brother had been smuggling cocaine by the ton into the United States for years. I would maintain that's the reason they had their relationships put together, that they all knew it. It was all wink, wink. And they had all the intelligence in the world. The CIA knew, the NSA knew, Treasury Department knew, and was all fine with them because they were all in on it. Now, page 293, you write, "The ugly human rights and national security crisis along our southern border, being that it is now overrun by drug smugglers and human traffickers, can be traced directly back to the cartel associations of Honduras Presidents Porfirio Lobo Sosa and Orlando Hernandez, the evil, self-serving foreign relations policies of Joe Biden, and the unquestionable support for these evil practices by Joe Biden's key military operative, General John F. Kelly. Let us not forget Barack Obama's invisible hand backed every move." Okay, I mean, I think this is a very damning chapter and one of the most important chapters that you've uncovered, and you were there to witness it, Mike.
Mm-hmm. That's right. I traveled with Joe Biden to Honduras in 2012 when he met with President Pepe Sosa Lobo. And as I write in the book, it was a very suspicious trip, and I think there may have been a transaction conducted because he landed at sort of a very secretive air base outside of the capital city of Honduras and met the vice president of Honduras, who was she was a woman, right-hand advisor to the president. And did she bring a parcel or a box or a briefcase that may have been filled with something that Joe Biden could put in a bank account? We'll see. Every time the Air Force Two travels back and forth to a foreign country, it's like its own diplomatic pouch. People don't look at what goes on the plane, and they don't look at what comes off the plane. especially if it's under the direction of the vice president who says, yeah, let that on. That's for me. So there's a lot of crime activity going on between Joe Biden and people around the world right now. And Honduras was one of the worst ones, and it's infiltrated into the Vatican. And Archbishop Vigano stood up to it and is standing up to it. And, hopefully the truth will come out. Like I tell the Archbishop, and when I email him, we're telling truth, and the truth is God's word. And that means God's on our side. We're doing God's work here.
Well, Mike, I commend you and your courage for bringing this forward, and we're going to continue the story. This will be the first of several broadcasts we do on this. And again, your book, The Case to Impeach and Imprison Joe Biden, I think is essential reading. And I encourage everybody to get it and to travel with you as your mind opened to the evil that was going on in front of you when they thought you were just there as a stenographer and weren't paying particular attention. Thank God you paid attention, and thank God you had the courage to write this book. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Corsi.
All right, we'll be having more of these programs. This is Dr. Jerome Corsi, and this is thetruthcentral.com. Follow me on X at Corsi Jerome 1. You can follow me on Substack. JeromeCorsiPhD.substack.com. We'll be posting this article I've written and this interview in the next period of time on my Substack. And we encourage everybody to follow it, watch it, like it, share it. In the end, God always wins. God will win this too. And we're here to expose it. We're here, in the spirit of 2 Chronicles 7:14, to get on our knees and repent that we've allowed this to happen, this disgrace. And we resolve that we will implore God to hear our prayer and heal our land. God can cure this. In the end, God wins. God's sovereign. God wins. God did not create this experience for Satan to win. Satan loses. But we have to do our part in ensuring that happens. Thank you for joining us. We are doing podcasts every weekday at thetruthcentral.com. God bless.